Well, welcome back, everyone. Today I'm here in Garth Greenaway's very lovely house. Thank you for joining me, Garth.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
Yeah, this should be fun. So, quick introduction on you, and feel free to add things. Tell me I'm wrong. So, you're a husband. You're a father. You were born in Sydney.
Sydney,
Is that correct?
yep.
Yep. And then you developed properties there, both for the Sydney government and also for your own company, Greenaway Commercial.
Yeah.
And then you work with SDG, Sustainable Development Group, to build churches, work with churches here in Zambia.
No, mostly in Australia.
Okay,
Sydney,
mostly in
so
Australia.
Online work, yeah.
Okay, there you go.
Yeah.
And then you're the fundraising manager for ACU.
Yeah.
And you're going to start a coffee truck.
Yeah.
So you got a lot of things you're doing.
Yeah, it's a bit crazy this year, but
Yeah.
looking forward to it.
And
It's exciting.
and you moved from Australia to Zambia. So let's start there. Like, what inspired that?
Yeah, well, I think during COVID, it was a good time for our family, actually. We got shut down. Things got a bit crazy in Australia, but we're doing online work. And I think we just took the time as a family. My kids were ranging from maybe 13 to 17 at the start of that. So really an important time for them. And we just took advantage of the time we had at home to really invest in Bible, learning, family worship, those type of things. And we just grew individually, spiritually, heard about the confessions, hadn't done that before. So went through the confessions of faith and things like that. And then things started to get really weird in terms of COVID. Truth just got really blurred and really confusing. And so, there was a real wall between seeing people, very intelligent people, sort of really pass over on truth. And then also obviously in the faith side of things. So Christianity, other ideologies coming in and things like that. And it started to play on us a bit. We got out of COVID. Things were going back to normal. But in that, we kept on going with our personal faith and family focus. And in that, God just laid something on our hearts. It was just really strange. Things were going well. I had moved from my government role into my own business and consulting for SDG and others as well. And so things were going well there, but we were quite remote still. We could use remote. What I mean by that is flexible, online school, remote sort of work. And God placed on our heart this idea of something different, sort of seeing what had happened in Australia and looking strategically at where we could really invest the second half of our lives and also invest into our kids more for their last bit of being with us at home before they sort of flew the coop and sort of set their own paths.
Yeah.
And in that, God placed Zambia. And part of that was linked to ACU as well. We saw what they were doing and it really impacted us in our heart. And we thought strategically, business from an investment point of view, I was thinking investing resources, where would I do it? I felt like there was a really good opportunity for ACU to do something really awesome for the kingdom. So that
Zambia has a lot of opportunity because it's very chaotic, and chaos is the breeding grounds for opportunity. So
absolutely, exactly.
There's a lot to do here and a lot to make it more efficient and to fix and all sorts of things. So let's talk about Australia though. So Australia was originally founded by convicts, and they, as a general rule, convicts are ready to fight people. So it was very interesting to me seeing Australia's response to COVID, which was kind of everyone just agreed.
Yeah, very compliant, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it was very strange. Yeah, so I actually watched someone on that. Someone that was asked that question, exactly that, a history professor who saw things our way, I guess. And he was asked that question, and his actually history lesson on it was that it was a myth that we were the scoundrel kind of, Crocodile Dundee type people. It was actually, we're very compliant as a people group.
Really?
So even though we're adventurous and fun and easygoing and things like that, the Australian, the history tells us that if we're more of a pack, so if someone steps out of that compliant group, we're actually really hard on them. We have a tall poppy syndrome type thing. If someone steps out, if someone does something different against the cultural norm, we're actually ready to jump on that. We don't like that. So we're actually quite a compliant people. We trust government to a degree. Like everyone teases government and sort of plays around. But I think all in all, we've had relatively good governments in the past. and so, which is a good thing, but it also has bred, they know what's going on, they're good, they mean well, things like that. And so I think that, that we haven't had history of lack of trust or seen things go bad in Australia. So we're ready to accept and comply and to keep the peace.
Yeah, that's interesting, especially because I was as I was kind of looking around from little Moscow, Idaho, at kind of how the world was reacting, because Moscow is kind of in a very isolated,
right?
very isolated bubble. We
Yeah.
kind of did our own thing
Same
as a
thing.
general rule,
Yeah.
and so I was actually only out of school for a month, or no, 2 weeks, and then we were like, we're back in school.
Yeah.
But it was interesting seeing California was very like pushing back against the government, and I talked to someone from there, and he was like, yeah. Because we've been pushing back against the government like the whole time.
Yeah.
Like we have Gavin Newsom, and before him we've had some really horrible people in government. And so it's just like we're constantly fighting the government.
Yeah.
So why wouldn't we fight them here? Yeah. So was Australia founded by convicts?
It was settled by convicts. It wasn't founded. It was founded.
Okay.
It was a penal colony. So it was they were sent. There was a prison. So it started off as a prison.
Yeah.
But then it was obviously run by those who were controlling the prison.
Yeah.
And so there was rebellions and there was things of that nature going on. But then it went through a peaceful federation process as well. So it we didn't have a war of independence or anything like that. We stayed a Commonwealth country, and we grew peacefully. We grew our own identity through the First and Second World War, and that came with sort of ingenuity, mateship, things like that. So and that flew through. But then we became quite a multicultural country, and we're proud of that sort of acceptance of people is part of the culture as well. And to give a fair go is one of the statements we have. We like to give people a fair go, to work hard and to make it for themselves. And as long as they're good mates, we'll accept them. Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, so that's very fun. Culture. And what is the kind of history of was Christianity? I would assume with convicts, that's not like they're not usually Christians, but
yeah, no, I think Christianity, the English influence, that the Catholic, Methodist, all those revivals, all those sort of things was a big push through, so all denominations. Really, I'm not a big history buff on it, but I have seen the outcomes, the fruits of it for Australia was definitely through the Christian worldview and revival there. So
and true of much of the West as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Even
so it's very similar to any
throw it
part
off,
in the West.
But we've got many hundreds of years of people doing the right thing.
Exactly.
That's tricky to throw off. So how have you kind of seen Australia shift from the point where, like, when you were born, when you were growing up there, to, hey, we need to leave this country and go to Africa?
Yeah, I mean, part of it's what happened there, and like I said, part of it was what happened to us personally, and that desire that God placed on our heart to be here. So it wasn't fully just running away, but there is definitely a decline there that we saw that happened. And it was quite a shock to me. I think I was complacent too, in terms of the belief that Australia was still this country Christian, the Christian heritage was still very strong. That was the feeling. But I think I liken to a good analogy that I have in my mind is the Roadrunner and Coyote, where Coyote runs off the cliff and he keeps running for a while until Roadrunner points down and sees that he's not on anything, and then he drops. Yeah, I think that's what it's been in Australia for a while. So even probably when I was born, it was probably that far ago, that we really replaced God with mateship and other values. So we had the legacy of Christian values and Christian worldview, but I don't think we really, as a whole, not individually, but as a society, we didn't really hold strong to God. We kind of rejected that. I think we had other ideologies, secularism, materialism, and come through, and we didn't have a strong understanding of the biblical worldview. I think we just took it for granted and it wasn't challenged. And I think what happened over the last so many years with universities and that growing and immigration with those being taught but similar ideology in universities coming in as well, I think we just saw it as something silly that was being taught, and people grow out of it and they come back to the church and things like that. But as that grew, and then as we got challenged through the COVID period and people got rocked with push of ideology. I don't think people knew how to stand. They just sort of flew with the tide, and their values and ethics that were biblical in a sense, but not based on God anymore, not based on the authority of the Bible. It meant they had nothing to stand on. So they just got swept up.
Yeah.
And it was amazing to see, very sad to see the culture sweep that way. But even so with the churches and in churches and certain church groups actually just flow with the tide of culture, not be anchored in the Bible, the authority of the Bible anymore.
Yeah. Then you decided Zambia. How did you find ACU?
I think just watching online, I probably would have been Vodi Borkum. He was an interview. I didn't know of Vodi before, being from Australia. Just didn't know that, but he came out with Fault Lines. And so obviously the Black Lives Matter piece, there was some people that we like to listen to in Australia, that good Christian people that had a measured sort of view and sort of looked on that and called it what it was pretty early in terms of a Marxist movement and ideology.
Yep.
And so that sort of, we agreed from the beginning that that's clearly what it was. And so there was an interview from that to Vodi, and then he mentioned this university in Africa, and then didn't think much of it at that time. But then a year and a half sort of later, when we're going through this thing in the heart, then my wife said, what was that Vodi guy that spoke on, he did some uni over in Africa, because we were thinking about Africa and our heart was for Africa. And then, and for university as well, and truth and sort of grounding truth. Yeah. And so we looked that up, and then that's when we started to look into African Christian University and seeing what they did, and it just grew from there. Yeah.
Yeah. No, Zambia is a very growing nation as far as the Christianity being implanted in. So it's fun to be here at the beginning of that process.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's talk property development. So back in Australia, you were telling me you started as like a property engineer.
Yeah. So I did good at maths at school, but I wasn't particularly academic. I was more into sport and other things like that. And then so I tried uni for a bit, did maths there, and then really just wanted to get a job. So I found something that was mathematical. I was told about this job, and that was really a surveyor's assistant. So I did that for a bit, and that was in an engineering firm. Generally, they're linked to engineering firms, and so you're out pegging things and measuring things and everything else. And then, but you saw civil engineers and drainage engineers, structural engineers, that sort of things was all highly mathematical. And so, I grew into that. I got a job as a civil design engineer, and so that was really designing the roads, drainage, water, doing the mathematical calculations for all those things. For land subdivision, so property development. And then sort of just saw the next thing that I liked, and then trained myself in that, and then got a job in that area. And so for the first half of my career, I was in more the engineering side and project management of the delivery and design of things. But the clients we would have, they were called development managers generally. Sometimes have other titles, but it's called a development manager. And they're really the business person. So they're as if they're the owner. They basically manage the money. So they have money entrusted to them by a big firm, and it's their job to essentially oversee the whole thing. So the investment into the purchase of the land that they want to develop, getting the highest and best use out of the land, taking that through using all their consultants, and then taking that through the legislation process, the approval process. And then there's also the market and what pricing they're going to do, the marketing, sales, delivery, the whole bit. So just running a business essentially in terms of developing land from somewhat low value to something that's of greater worth. Yeah.
So you were started as a property engineer. What exactly does a property engineer do?
Okay.
Because it's not building bridges. It's
So I mean, it's all engineering. So most people would have a degree in engineering, and they can then specialize in what they do. Some specialize in building bridges, and that's a civil engineer.
Civil engineering,
Yeah. So it's all civil engineering. Surveying's a bit different, and that's another type of engineering, and that's really about measuring, and doing titles on land.
Titles.
So that's the illegal right to your land. Who owns what? So converting the real world to the data world, and so it's legal. And then there's restrictions on land that they work through that give rights. So it's very much the contractual side, but also the legal side of ownership of property. and rights on property. So that's surveying. And then there's civil engineering, which is really, it encompasses everything, really. You can have bridges, you can have structural engineering sits within that. But when we refer to civil, it's more to do with flat things. So like drainage, sewer, water, electrical to a degree, but then you have electrical engineers, specialists, roads, drainage. So anything to do with a subdivision. So a master planned estate where you build houses on.
Yeah.
A lot of the work is done by civil engineers.
Yeah.
In terms of.
So you were taking like a raw piece of land and then putting infrastructure into it and then putting houses on it.
Exactly.
And that kind of thing. Okay. That's my dad is actually doing something similar in Moscow.
Oh, well. Great.
It's his first time ever doing it, and he's struggling through it.
Yeah.
But it's
there's
a
so many
tough
parts.
learning
There's
curve.
so many parts to it.
Yes, and the city is constantly trying to get him to pay more money.
Yeah.
So
that's the biggest thing, to be honest. It's the negotiation with the authorities and taxes and shared rights and all those things that actually makes it really challenging.
Yeah.
Approvals is one of the hardest things.
Yeah.
The actual building of the thing is pretty straightforward.
And then you moved on to property development kind of manager.
Yeah.
So then you were just overseeing those projects?
Yeah, so it was more like what your dad's doing in a sense, if
Okay.
it's the oversight of the whole thing. So you'd have the design stuff, and you could get involved as much as you like. It's a great job. You can get involved as much as you like in your expertise, but you could also trust to a degree and get them manage the best out of experts as well. So that was fun. So like I said, it's managing more the business side of it. So your responsibility was, if it was a public company, was to the shareholders of getting profit for that year to return to the shareholders. And in what you were producing was the sale of either residential lots, shopping centers, rentals, high-rise apartments, whatever your company was focused on. That's what you would focus on.
Yeah. So you did all kinds of things, from high-rise apartments all the way to like farms and things.
Yeah. So first half of my career, because of the civil component, was very much on your land subdivision work. So really just carving up lots, and then people would buy them, or a house builder would buy them and then build houses and sell them off to individuals to live in, or families to live in. But then as second half, as I grew in development management, I also went into large master planning communities, which included and some more, we call it difference greenfield, and that's where you take just a piece of farm type land.
Yep.
Or brownfield, and usually that's like where you're knocking down something, or could be a piece of contaminated land that was used for a train yard or something like that now is just beautiful piece of real estate on the water or something. And so you're turning that into, you're working through contamination issues and remediation, and then you've got a development piece of land that's worth a lot of money if you actually turn it into something good.
Yeah.
So how to move into that.
Yeah. Okay. So how do you go about, let's say you've got the land. How do you go about getting it to be productive?
Okay. First is thinking it through. So doing the maths. All right. So you need to look at what you're allowed to do, because it's not just the market. Obviously, we've got regulatory constraints. So we look into that from a planning point of view, what you're actually allowed to do. See if it's reasonable, because you can apply to rezone it and get changes in the law in terms of what you're allowed to do. And that can add a lot of value to the land. So you do a contract with the landowner if you didn't own it yourself, and you try and work out a deal that's a win-win, so you can get leverage that. That's your first opportunity to leverage growth, and then you would do a planning of what is the best outcome. So looking at the market, what you could achieve, work with architects if it was a build, and then just design something that added value. Basically, just that people would want to live, to build, to live in, to buy. You do the numbers and make sure that it was profitable, all the costs, and you'd weigh it all up. And then you'd go through the process. Once you got approval to move forward with the process, you'd go through the approval process, and then you would contract out to the build. You get your finance in place, and then you would start your sales once you had started your construction, or often pre-construction, you would start your sales process, usually as a requirement of the financing.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was it. And then you would, right to the end of delivery, sale to whoever's buying it. Usually the mums and dads and the families are buying what you're at the end, and then that would to the accounting and to the reporting to the shareholders on what you actually achieved.
Yeah. So you did this just in Sydney or all throughout Australia?
Predominantly Sydney. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
There you go. Nice. And then Well, first I'll ask, what got you into the real estate field? Was it just, this is math and I don't mind math? And
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay.
Yeah, pretty much. But then I loved it. Like once I liked engineering and that was fun. And yeah, solving problems was what I liked to do. And it was just like interesting problems to solve and adding value. I really enjoyed that. It's like you're taking something and you're adding value to it, and to be creative in that way. I really enjoyed that. Yeah, but once I saw the development management role, didn't know that for quite a number of years, that there was actually that existed, that type of role. Once I saw that, I was like, yeah, this suits me. I like this. The ability to be flexible, to manage, and to really look at where you can add value to the business and to do something really cool. Yeah, I really enjoyed that.
Yeah, so I got one question from that, and then we'll move on to the SDG. So people often talk about real estate as like, this is a safe thing to invest in. It's super secure.
Yeah.
But then we have moments like 2008 in the housing crisis. So is real estate really, like, is it as consistent as people say it is?
Yeah. Yeah, no, like I'm not fully an economist or anything, so I don't know. But what I've seen over the last 20 years is, yeah, it pretty much is. Like, I think you got to look for speculation. So when you're, like in that was a lot of things went wrong in that. There was a lot of speculation. There was a lot of greed that went into it. A lot of the actual loans that were being given out and people taking them up. So there was a lot of signs that was never sustainable. But yeah, I mean, one thing that shocked me was during COVID, really. Like, we didn't have any immigration coming in, which was a large part of our growth. So it was all shut off. But prices went up 20%. So I was like, wow, how did that happen?
Yeah.
Like supply and demand, right? And then, supply wasn't really going very fast and demand was growing, and we already had a massive undersupply of property. But then, so anyway, it just didn't seem to marry up. So, but it's still, I think because property acts because it's real and it's tangible and it's limited. Like you can't make much more of it unless you're Dubai or someone sort of building stuff in Singapore. It's not that easy to make more of. I think it acts a little bit like gold in that sense when things are bad. So when things are bad, property seems to go up. When things are good, people want to buy houses and things seem to go up. So I think that's part of it, is that population's growing. There's always a need, but it's also used as a safety tangible asset, especially in certain places. I don't think it's everywhere, but in places like Australia, where there is an undersupply and things are going well from a economic viewpoint, it's a nice place to park your money if things are, like, at least hedge and put money in property.
Yeah, I don't know if it's very similar here in Zambia.
I don't know if it's Zambia.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a safe bet here in Zambia.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, well, I think that's some of the difference is the ownership rights too. So property rights over in Australia are strong, except for the capital state, ACT. That has a bit of a different arrangement in terms of 99-year leases and things like that. But the full property ownership rights that you get in the other states is strong. You have strong ownership rights. I think it's stable. It's not too socialist, at least not yet. And so it's very trusted. Like, you own that piece of land, and I think it's just a really stable asset in that sense.
Yeah.
Whereas it may not be in other parts of the world.
It's been kind of sad seeing the U.S. actually in a bit. Property is losing its security, as it were, just because people are seeing, like, more and more you're taxed every year on the property, and if you don't pay that, then they'll take it from you. It's just sad seeing that they're removing.
And I think that's starting to those ideas are circulating a little bit more in Australia. So there is some tax, but it's not seen to be too onerous at the moment. But there was talk of other ideological driven taxes on land, as if you didn't own it. So it wasn't really honouring the ownership component. It was more potentially traditionally owned or something else, and so you had to pay taxes for that. And so people aren't seeing it as your land anymore. So that's starting to creep in from an ideological level, but it hasn't seen the impact, I don't think, yet in terms of actual.
Yeah. Which is good, because that's the kind of thing you want, is people owning their land and then taking responsibility for their land, and growing it and adding value. It's the kind of thing that makes a country look better. One of the things I've seen here in Zambia is not like it's part of it is it plays itself out in litter everywhere, all over the road. There's garbage. It's just you don't think of this land, this country, and also like your house as something that's like yours and should be taken care of and should be admired.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, Sustainable Development Group. What is it? How did you get into it? Where are they?
Yeah. Yeah, they're a not-for-profit development consultancy, and they focus on, or all they do really is to work with churches who, generally in the West, where you have lots of value left over, so the land prices have gone up significantly, but their ability to redevelop their church to make it aligned so they can deliver their ministry goals is not there without significant injection of capital. And so, but they have so much value, sometimes $10 million worth of value in land. It's just with a really old church on it that's not really doing what it needs to do, and it's run down. They can't afford the maintenance of it. And so, they're an Anglican group. That's how they started, but they service any Orthodox, I guess, church. They're quite wide on who they service, as long as it's for the glory of God, which is what SDG actually stands for. So it's two meanings: Sustainable Development Group and SDG, which is Latin, a Latin term. I don't know very much Latin, so I'll mess it up. But it basically means for the glory of God alone.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, so you come in and you help churches who have lots of land or just don't know how to deal with it. Or
yeah, they have land. They probably have an idea, like, what do we do with this? We have a piece of land. We think it's a good, it's been built up around us. We have this community, but that's getting very tired. We can't afford the maintenance on it. What can we do with our how do we leverage this to actually use our assets better for the kingdom work that we want to do? So, so we generally don't get too involved if they don't have a ministry plan or anything like that, because building something just for the sake of it, there's not much meaning to that. But if they really have, goals to be the living church and to use the assets they have and steward them well, we get alongside them and help them steward and give them advice and help run projects as well and deliver projects for them. So that's from doing the feasibility analysis, figuring out what you could do, seeing how that aligns with their ministry plans, and we'll work through it with them. Once we have an agreement with them on how that could look and wanting to go forward, we then move forward to delivery and figure out how best to deliver it and which structure. So that could be doing it ourselves, actually doing the project development management, as I said, getting the finance for the project and delivering it through to the end. Or what I tend to focus on, because of my experience in government, what I used to do was major partnerships. So I would actually I would tender out to a developer to add value to the project, and we would be the landowner and would have an agreement with the developer, and we would figure out what we wanted. They would give us their best deal while getting a profit through the development. And so we'd negotiate that, but we'd also negotiate things that if they did better, would share in the success and be able to invest that back into ministry.
Yeah. Okay. So how'd you get into that originally?
Yeah. I think we just had that same idea. So individually. So where I worked was the Land and Housing Corporation for New South Wales government. I had someone on my team that he was great, and he had a passion like me to see churches do more with their land and not sit idly on it and not steward it, sort of just bury it, like the parable. We saw that a lot. That was burying their assets and just sitting still. And some wanted to do things, but they didn't know how. And so, or they were getting bad advice or things like that. So we just thought, look, we can help them. As we started to prod into that, another gentleman with other experience, an architect and passion and skills, he was doing the same thing. And he had connections. He was in the Anglican church and had connections to some how do I say this? Some people who were wealthy and had the same desire to see that flourish. And so we said, look, you've got that connection, you go for it. I was really comfortable where I was working, and in the government space. So he went and grew that and did very well to set that up. And so I just supported him where I could. And then once it came time to leave the government position I had, it was a perfect fit. So I'm still a consultant, so I still do other consultancy work, but they're my number one client.
Yeah, and they're in Australia, right?
Yeah, they're in Sydney.
Okay.
Australia, yeah.
And are they elsewhere in the West, or is it just in Sydney?
No, it's just in Sydney, but they do have plans to grow. But they've got a lot going on. It's amazing how many churches have actually asking for their work and things like that. So it's been amazing.
Yeah, no, I'll say the church I came from back in Moscow, similar kind of problem. So they bought land, planning to build a church, and then kind of running through, because no one really had done that before. And so running through, like, how do we do this? That kind of thing would be very helpful.
Yeah. Well, they're very keen to grow and support. Across. I think, the one I'm looking at now is actually down at Cape Town.
There you go.
Yeah, there's a university there that a donor from Australia has backed and has asked SDG to offer some services to help that go forward. So I'm sort of given my location here, a bit of a conduit to start them off and to help them get going on their development. So they're very keen to help to help grow the kingdom where they can.
Yeah. How do you, and this is a question that you may not have an answer for, but how do you kind of, when you're going about helping these people and teaching them, like, this is how, you do that kind of, this is how you build your property, this is how you manage it, that kind of thing. How do you teach the mentality of we're going to figure this out, and the mentality of how you should be thinking when you're looking at property?
Sure. I think it's a relationship thing to start. It takes time. So sometimes we get a group that's ready to go and they've got some experience in there, but they don't have the time, and they have some understanding of what they want, and but some don't have any experience in it. I think either's fine. I think what we look for mostly is the heart to grow the kingdom and be the church, to really that passion of there. And if they have that, I think they're equally aligned with us in terms of seeing the building as a tool to achieve more. And so that's when we get alongside, and that's when it works really well. So I don't know how much it is us, using clever techniques for teaching or anything like that. I think it becomes more on the heart alignment. If it's about the ministry, and then they're willing to listen and learn, and they have a trust in the expertise of SDG. They have a lot. It's not just me. It's like 20 people that all come from different senior levels in their field, and so that gives a lot of trust. And we've succeeded on quite a number of projects already. So that success and trust and build up relationships already there. I think it's about their kingdom focus, and if they have that, then teaching them the rest of it is just a fun experience. It comes naturally. Exactly.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. We'll move on to, you're going to start a coffee cart, coffee truck, coffee something like that here in Zambia, with the express goal, you said, of instilling the coffee mentality, or the coffee culture here in Zambia. What got you into that? Okay.
Well, I miss it. I miss good coffee.
That's fair.
So that was one thing. So I really wanted good coffee, and everywhere I went, it didn't really happen. I saw, and second to that, I was looking at an opportunity for two things. One was to start working through a business that could it could help me, because we'll talk about ACU in a minute, but obviously that's all volunteer, and so to have something locally to work on as well, that would help in terms of sustainability for being able to continue that there, was something that I was looking for. And I saw an opportunity in coffee for that, but I saw an opportunity to help with culture in coffee, just because it can get a large turnover. And I think Zambians are quite open, as opposed to where I come from, in terms of exploring and like talking about Jesus and Christian worldviews, and
very much
discussing those things. Are very open. So to take that opportunity now, before it may not last forever, to put out truth. I was going to do on coffee cups, but that might prove difficult. But online and at the cart, to have a quote of the day, that type of thing, to get people talking over a coffee as they get their takeaway coffee, to hopefully get excited by the philosophical, but Christian worldview coming through, to challenge them and to grow that. I know it's a small touch. I'm not expecting too much from it, but I think if lots of people do things like that, then it can, shift the dial and sort of start to strengthen a culture. So it's just a little bit way of impacting the culture there as well.
Yeah, I think it'll also be interesting to see as the people here have more energy and more stamina from the coffee. Will they be more productive?
Yeah, it will really be
will
interesting. Yeah, it'll spark them up a bit.
Yeah.
I think so. Hopefully, corporations, especially like workplaces, will value that 2 hours of fanatic input that they will get from their employers. Hopefully.
Yeah, no, that's one of the things I found interesting here is kind of the I don't want to expend energy mindset because I don't know when I'm going to get it back.
Yeah.
And so hopefully, if you can, here's a sustainable source of of energy that goes in short spurts, but then you're able to knock out a bunch of things, be productive for 2-3 hours, and get a whole ton done. That might be very helpful for this culture.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we'll see how it goes, but I hope so.
Yeah. So have you been done work in developing coffee as far as from the crop to the coffee?
No. I looked at that first, but it's not my expertise at all. I just know what tastes good, and I know how to make it good.
Okay.
So, but I've noticed here there is quite a lot of good roasting and good beans around. So, a lot of the Arabica beans do come from Africa anyway, South America and Africa.
It's the right place to grow them.
Yeah, it's the right place to grow them. Yeah. So there are some... Yes, I don't think even in the coffee stores, there's not a lot of, there's a few that I just don't like or whatever, but there's the actual, they medium roast them, they smell quite good. So I don't think, I identified pretty quickly, it wasn't really the coffee beans that were the problem. It was just the love of coffee wasn't there. The desire to actually make a good coffee just didn't exist. There was no understanding of what a good coffee was. And then when you do find someone with an desire to make good coffee, it's, the understanding of how to make a good coffee wasn't very strong either. Yeah. So we need to start small, deliver good coffee, and then grow the ability within baristas to care about what they're serving, and to know how to create an amazing coffee. Yeah. Yeah.
So and then you also mentioned you were looking into specialty coffee.
Yeah, I mean specialty coffee is just a term that is tried to denote just instead of just making, like I said, that coffee that you just make and then people just drink because they just drink it, to actually, it's a love of coffee. You've actually made something. Australia is blessed with, in my view, amazing coffee. It's a significant coffee culture. You go to a meeting and first thing is the order of lattes downstairs, and baristas all over Sydney they're everywhere, and a lot of them are very, very good. Yeah. And they make beautiful coffee. They extract it right, they do the milk right, and they serve it up with pride and care. So just looking forward to that happening here as well.
Yeah. Were you always a coffee person?
No, I wasn't. I teenager, I was in uni. I had a lot of Coca-Cola and Twix through my lectures. Yeah, that wasn't very healthy. But no, I got into coffee, I don't know how long ago, probably maybe 12 years ago I started drinking it, but didn't know much. Didn't really like it that much. It's probably more social pressure. And then in the workplace, and then the coffee culture grew. And then as I started to taste really well-made coffees, then it changed my life.
Yeah. No, I don't like coffee at the moment.
You don't like coffee?
All right,
we'll try and convert you.
I know. I have brothers who, one of my younger brothers who's 16 loves coffee, and would drink a cup of coffee before every morning. Yeah. My dad's like, no, not yet. You're too young for that still. But I don't love coffee.
No, I'm a bit of a fussy one though, so that hopefully that helps me in making good coffee. But I'm not. I pretty much will only drink a milk coffee, like an espresso coffee, so not plunger coffee or French press or anything like that. Though I can drink it, I'm not a fan. Doesn't entice me that much. But your milk coffee, whether it be a piccolo through to a large latte, no sugar, no nothing. Just enjoy the actual coffee flavor expressed right with a really well done milk that's creamy like paint instead of frothy. I really enjoy that. Yeah, and like you said, with the productivity, it's like for me when I used to drink it in the morning just for a meeting, it was like the Limitless show, Bradley Cooper. Yeah, my eyes would open up and I was on fire for like an hour. Right. Yeah,
let's do this thing.
Let's do it.
Let's go get it. Yeah, you may not know the answer to this, but I've always been curious. My dad he loves coffee, and so he had a friend give him some specialty coffee, which was elephant dung coffee.
I have heard of that. Yeah.
how do you know how they make that? How did they like?
I know how they make it. I've never had it.
Yeah.
They feed it to animals, and a monkey, I think, is another one too. And then through their processing, their digestive processing, enzymes react, and apparently it produces really good coffee beans.
So
which
they feed
roast.
the elephant coffee,
Yeah, the coffee fruit, or
and then they
yeah.
just collect its.
Yeah, they collect its
stool
dung and then they
samples.
wash it, and then I think they roast it after that, is what I believe. Yeah.
Huh.
And apparently that creates different specialty coffee that's really nice, apparently. Apparently. I haven't tried it. I'm not in a rush to try it, but
Yeah.
yeah. Yeah, it is
That's
something
one of
they
the
do.
weirder things humans have done.
Yeah, I think so. It's
Yeah.
very interesting. I don't know how you market that either.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's people out there that
Or the first guy who figured it out.
Yeah.
Like you put it
That's
through
right.
the elephant, and then
Yeah.
he took the.
You
And
have to
he's
be a bit
like, let me
suspicious, don't
drink
you?
this, and you're like, "What's wrong with you?" And he's like, "No, it's really
I created
good.
something
I
amazing
assure you,
here."
It's super good. We got to do this again.
Yeah.
We got to keep it up." I'd be like, "No, let's just not." Yeah, that's very odd. Okay. Well, now I know I'll avoid elephant dung coffee.
Yeah.
For the first bit at least.
Well, I don't know. Apparently it's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but don't do it yourself probably. I'd
Yeah.
make sure it's washed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let a specialist do that.
Yeah.
Then ACU.
Okay.
So let's talk about you are the fundraising manager.
Yeah.
For
Yeah,
ACU.
recently appointed
Yes. There we
fundraising
go.
manager.
So, and then you mentioned you found ACU through Very Bachem. How did you get into fundraising manager?
Well, really, when we came here, we only came for 4 months. Yeah, that was our initial plan to see how it went, and then the desire. Yeah, it was a weird desire. Just really stayed. We didn't. Every time we thought, "Oh, this is hard. Let's go home." The desire was to ramp up in us all. No, I think God wants us to stay, and it was just a really strange feeling. And things enabled us to stay. Like SDG was very gracious and allowing me to continue working online, and saw opportunities, like I said, in Cape Town and things like that. So yeah, that was amazing. God working through that as well. That even though I was working online, I was still local, whereas this is very different, and that worked out to be able to keep going with them in that way. So yeah, just my son Jack, as you know, goes to ACU, and he was really enjoying it, the biblical worldview teaching, and settled in there really quickly.
He's engaged to a Zambian girl.
That is
so
true. That helped.
Very much
That
settled
helped.
in.
Yeah, that's right. She is beautiful, and that was amazing. So yeah, God working through that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
So so that happened, and just the passion of ACU. I mean, I was just saying, I wasn't just felt that Zambia, one of the reasons for Zambia was ACU, like I said at the beginning, and so just kept in contact and just tried to help where I could. And then as we got closer to the end of the year, they were like, okay, let's figure out how to let's see where best we can use you for now in this place. And that was a position that needed some support.
Yeah.
That wasn't filled.
Yeah.
So I went for that position, went through the formal process, and then got awarded that, and then we had to work out visas coming back into the country, which was fun.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then now I'm back here.
Yep.
And just started a week or so ago, just getting my head around where they're at, where they're going. Yeah, and trying to so doing the fundraising manager bit, but also helping with the VC in terms of some of the business unlocking things that I've done before in the past. But really trying to scope it forward, so the goals they have, the mission they have, is really articulated well, and we know where we're going, and we have the structure right and the things working right to get to that place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because that's not super similar to what you were doing with property development.
No, I mean, I did raise capital. I mean, it's different.
Yeah.
It's actually for a project, not asking for donations. So that is very different. But I think where it does help is in the trust of I hope it helps in the trust of the donors for the stewardship of understanding and the growth of where we're going. So it's a dual role. It's not just, I don't think it's just a fundraising manager per se. I think it is a linking of those funds to achieve the mission of the uni. So I have quite a role, a supportive role, but an important role nonetheless, of looking at the sustainability of the uni, to grow that really well, to articulate what it's actually what it's trying to achieve. It's not just being a uni in Zambia.
Yeah.
It's much bigger than that. And so to make sure that everything's aligned to achieving that outcome.
Yeah.
So helping with that, and then communicating the donors where we're up to with that, being open and honest about that, I hope will help we'll get people excited that there's something amazing here.
Yeah.
And to be a part of it.
Yeah. In your own words, why should people donate to ACU?
Okay, well, strategically, like I took the approach, for me personally, strategically, I just think where you got the West, people are fighting there, and it needs to be fought there. It needs to be trying to reclaim. There needs to be that, but it's a very been there, done that. Seeing Christianity, we've rejected it to a degree, right? So there is that sort of strong pushback. So we can't give up there, but it's a hard battle to fight. Meanwhile, we have over here haven't really been through that sort of secular process. They're still in like traditional religion. They're accepting of Jesus, but it's this combined with their African traditional religions.
ATR,
right?
yeah.
So, but what they aren't is material. Like they don't have the materialism. What I mean by that is they believe there's more than just atoms in the universe, right? So they actually have that spiritual thing, which makes them at least open to Christianity. It gets confusing when they start to play around with the different, so they're very, very, very Christian on one hand, but then also they've got this sort of hedging of their old superstitions and things like that. So I think there's a limited time, to be honest, between either going back to or some neo-paganism type worldview, or to some other sort of humanistic secularism being pushed in from the West, where they don't have that absolute of morality and belief and truth in Jesus. And I think that what I would have loved in Australia, 30 years ago, would be something like an ACU, investing in truth into the churches, so we're equipped. What I've found that the Bible says, my people are dying for a lack of knowledge, and I saw that in Australia. We didn't have enough grounding. We took advantage, like I said before. We took it for granted that we were Christian, that we believed and we followed, we did good things, and the culture was pretty good, and we're nice to people and things like that. We went to church, we love God, God's great. We did all those things, but when ideologies start creeping in that look Christian, sound Christian, and into the church, we weren't ready for them. We hadn't seen that they were ideologies that have been recycled and repackaged and through, because we didn't have that understanding of history. We didn't understand of strong understanding of theology, what the biblical worldview actually was, what we could trade in, what we couldn't as well. And so we're trading in things that were really pivotal to the Christian worldview. And so back to Zambia, I just think it's a really, the ground is fertile. They need depth, they need planting, they need it to be strong. And I think there's a really good opportunity here to strengthen believers, to send them out as leaders in their workplaces, in their families, in their churches, into pillars of society, to speak truth, beauty, and goodness, and live out that life and really impact the future of Zambia, and then hopefully, if God wants to work it that way, into Africa in itself, and be an example for the world. As if the West continues to turn away from God, it can be a shining light and an influence back to the West.
No, the West is definitely trying to be post-Christian. And there's some fight for that, especially in America, much more than in Europe. Trying to be, move back to Christianity, but it's definitely post-Christian, and Zambia is very pre-Christian. A lot of the ideas are here, but putting them into like the gap between practical theology and theological, like ideological theology is pretty big. So a lot of people believe in Christ, but working that out in their actions they're still figuring that out. And so it's fun. Zambia is as a mustard seed at the moment.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then would you recommend people from the West moving to Africa, and especially to Zambia, to kind of see that, to learn that?
I think for a time, it's been an experience. I think it's good. I think if God's leading them there for some purpose as well, and they're motivated, go for it. I don't think necessarily for just a move on its own. I think whatever's best for their family, I guess. But I do think the family in America taking seriously the grounding of their children, I think is important. So if they're grounding their children in America and they've got community, and they're aware that they're kind of living in Babylon now, they're not living in the Christian West. There might in pockets. And
this is a hostile environment.
But you are living in Babylon, Australia, wherever, New Zealand, and all these places that were Christian, you're living in Babylon, and so to be grounded, if you're sending your children out in that without full strength and ability to come against it, because like, let's be real, it's hard. It can be really hard out there with with very clever ideologies that have been brewing and thought through very intelligent people for a couple of hundred years now, like of really, the liberal theology, the deism, like at the foundation of America, it was very deist, right? It was a heresy. And we let that slide because it was still God,
Because it was close.
Yeah, it was still God. The morality was there. God was still there. But it really starts to rob if it's not an immanent God, if it's a transcendent God only, then, it's really, there's no need for a savior, it's just judgment on works. It's works, righteousness. And so, I think just understanding that, the family is the most important thing. I think get that spiritual foundations in the family well, and if you can do that within Babylon or within a community, within that, even better. Yeah. And invest in that, then you don't need to move necessarily. At all. But as long as they're taking that seriously, that's probably what I'd say.
And there are strongholds in the West that are still fighting back.
Exactly.
Which is fantastic, but it's a very different fight than here.
Yeah, it's a different fight, and I think that fight needs to be had. Yeah. But I think going back to strategically, going back to base and sort of to where it's fertile, like in Zambia, to grow that strong and sort of reinforcements. Yeah. I think for the future, hopefully, that'll be welcome later. Yeah. Yeah.
What do you see from a property development standpoint in Zambia?
In Zambia? Yeah. It's a bit behind. It's interesting. I haven't been here long enough to see it. Apparently it was way worse. So it's getting better. But it's very interesting. I think one of a feeling, I'm speaking out of turn a little bit, I don't know enough, right? But just what I see, just my feelings, it's a little bit too much of regulation and socialism still embedded. I see the current president actually quite free market. I see him quite good there, but he's got a lot to do. So I don't know if he's going to be able to just turn around quickly. Yeah. So hopefully
in 5 years,
hopefully
it is,
he stays that way and gets a long run, like personally. But I mean, even like we talked about property ownership, it's different from what I found. Things like the roads, they're all built by the government.
Or the Chinese.
Yeah. They pay the government pays the Chinese
to build the roads,
right. Yeah. So in doing so, you don't have that. It'd be better than saying I'm not, except for major roads, that's different, right? But if you're talking about just literally your road for your development, if you actually say, no, we're not going to build them, I think you'll see more development. Yeah. Because at least you know that the cost is on the developer and they know what it is and they'll actually build them. Whereas no one cares. They think, okay, I might wait. Next year I might get a road. So why would I spend money on building a road? Yeah. Then 15 years later, they still don't have a road. So I think those type of things, like creating more free market, better property rights, things like that, which I have no influence on here obviously at all. But if that happens and they enable, become just less socialistic, I think that would go a long way, and I think things would improve pretty quickly here. Yeah, less dependent on government would be great. Yes, smaller government, less bureaucracy, more efficient bureaucracy where they have it. Yeah. And more private development that wasn't taking advantage of them as well. So Zambians have been taken advantage of there, but I think part of that is so obviously getting rid of the corruption that allows that to happen. That's what the president is trying to work on, and so I think that's a big thing. If you can get rid of corruption, then you start to build trust. Then you can leverage that trust to actually to grow. Yeah. I saw a pretty wild stat, which was 70% of the people employed in Zambia are employed by the government, which is crazy. And then there's also, they have like 70% unemployment. So it's a lot of government-reliant jobs, and also not very many of those jobs, because you got, there's 5 million people in Lusaka. Can't be 5 million government jobs. So, it's and it's a real problem there, right? Because it's circular. Like, because once you built that up, it's really hard to go back. Yeah. And trust that private market's going to be able to take over. So, again, not an economist, but I think efforts to grow the private sector here by not having too high taxes, by having rights, by having better approval systems.
Yeah.
They've got all those government workers, but the bureaucracy is very sluggish. So if they can improve those things, so to encourage private investment, I think, things will start to take off.
Yeah. I
The
talked
question
to
over whether they do or not. That's all.
Yes, it is. I talked to Lennox Califungwa on a.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've met him.
Yeah, I know Lennox.
Yeah,
Well.
I talked to him on a previous episode about this kind of idea as well, and he talked to great length about the importance of understanding your freedom in Christ to go and do things yourself, and that has not been instilled here. There's a lot of reliance on government, which is not a good thing, and is one of the reasons why the U.S. kind of collapsed, or began its descent. Is just people were lazy, and it's easier if the government does it, right? It's I don't have to get up in the morning and worry about, hey, I don't have a road, now I need to build one.
Yeah.
It's much easier, and so he was saying that there needs to be kind of a shock, in a sense of, but the government isn't here for you. You have to figure it out yourself, and you can, right? Because there's also a mentality of, I can't. The government provides jobs. The Chinese will take the jobs, and you got to give it to the Chinese. They're everywhere. They're very productive people, but the Zambians need to, take that over and see that as their job, as their duty to build their country. And we're still working on that. There's a ways to go, and that's part of the practical theology that needs to be melded into the
absolutely.
The culture.
Yeah, and the desire for innovation and to go for it and to add value, I think is probably a little bit lacking. I do see. I think Lennox maybe, because he's his people and stuff like that, and he's seeing it. He sees the bigger picture and knows a lot more than I do on it. But from where I've come from and to here, because of the need for things, I do see a lot of entrepreneurial spirit here. You'll see a Yango, like an Uber sort of driver. They've got like 2 businesses running on the side, not necessarily very well, but they're trying, So I do see there's definitely a shot going. What I do see also is it tends to be the same thing, though. They tend to limit themselves to what their friends done one thing, and so they do exactly the same thing, and everyone starts doing that industry or that type of idea. Yeah. So I think that would be good to expand for them to expand, to think a bit differently about the business, to get skilled up. But I do see an effort there, an entrepreneurial spirit. Yeah. But creativity and finishing it through, seeing from the money perspective and getting that right, and performance. There's a ways to go there, and it's interesting from the theological point of view, that idea of being free and having hope. Yeah. And having a desire to the cultural mandate too. The desire to add value. Right. Not just to build, make some money. Yeah. It's not just to get, to provide. That's important to provide, obviously, but to actually build something worthwhile. I think that's if that gets instilled, then that'll be really positive. Yeah. I was talking to Isaac on another episode, and we were talking about like the part of the reason that is kind of a survival mindset. He says it's true with the food they eat too, the maize, corn, and like, trying to get them to innovate that, and hey, let's do something else. Let's experiment. Let's try another crop. Let's try wheat. Let's try sweet corn. Let's try, a bunch of things let's try and innovate. And it's like, no, well, the people who survived before me did this thing. Yeah. So I'm going to do that thing because I don't want to risk my survival. Yeah. And it's a very prevalent thing here, and not something you see in the U.S., because in the U.S. you have kind of a safety net. If you start your business and your business fails, you have a job to fall back on. You're more valuable now as an employee. Here, it's like if you start something and it fails, you're kind of done. Yeah. Like that was your shot. That was your shot. And you blew it. And so there's a lot of like hesitancy to innovate and to go out on a limb. Yeah. Which is something that ACU is helping with. Yeah. In a way, especially with the SLP, student labor program, is kind of getting students to figure out the leading and the coordinating and the executing on doing projects that they haven't done before. Yeah. And things that will be useful not only for them but for the people around them. So that's another thing that ACU is trying to instill is the
kind of the opposite of a poverty mindset, a mindset of I can do this.
Yeah, and I think it's shifting it. It's not about a protection survival mentality. It's about for the glory of God and your mandate to grow things, and that's really so exciting to live that way. It's obviously hard. You've got realities around you and surviving, but I think living in that positive way for the glory of God and that leadership, and then getting the skills like at ACU is providing, and opportunities as well. And that's where I'm looking forward to ACU growing, is to having business opportunities, access to no interest loans, those type of things, to think bigger, but then being mentored and guided through that process to do a proper business proposal, think it all through, structure it, strategy, get that right. And I think I'm really excited about seeing some of, especially the business students, but not necessarily them, the ones that are in agriculture or other streams, start to grab onto those ideas and learn and take hold and see if they can thrive.
Africa is chaos, and
It's
chaos
chaos.
is the breeding grounds for opportunity. And so if they can figure that out, and if we can help them any way we can, then there's so much Africa could be.
Yeah.
But thank you for coming on.
No,
Is
pleasure.
there a place where people should find you online, or is it mainly in person?
Mainly in person. I do have a LinkedIn page, which I check occasionally.
There you go.
Not really strong on it, but I check it occasionally. So if you're
That'll be in the description.
But otherwise I'm in Leopards Hill, in the outskirts of Lusaka, and ACU. You can find me through there as well.
Yeah.
But yeah.
There you go. And then go find Sustainable Development Group.
Yeah.
Are they online?
Yeah, Sustainable Development Group.
Great. There you go.
As well.
Well, thank you for coming on. It's been
Thank you,
fantastic.
Jason. Pleasure.
See ya.
Out a little, out a little.